Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
All right, and you can see my slides?
And we can see your slides.
Okay, great. Well, that was a great discussion. I think I will try to maybe finish my presentation a little early because I think this group wants to get back to discussing some of these topics. Thank you for the invitation to join you today. I work in the Office of Advanced Cyberinfrastructure. This was the division, the office in NSF that helped support that Missing Millions study that we just heard from. I'm going to walk through a little bit of material for those who may not be as familiar with Office of Advanced Cyberinfrastructure, a couple of words on NSF. I'll touch on I think the theme in this session, and I'm lifting material that you saw some of it from Marone yesterday. This is material that my director, Manish Parashar, gave at Eva Dielman's workshop a couple of weeks ago. That was a workshop on CI for large facilities off of her pilot, her CoE Compass Award. I'll finish on a few relevant programs. It's in our DNA at NSF to talk about any sort of relevant open solicitation, and cyber training has one of those. Marone touched yesterday on a very interesting Dear Colleague letter. I'll show that again, and I'll finish with campus cyber infrastructure. So this is a little snapshot look at the National Science Foundation by numbers. We are perhaps efficient to a fault. That would be an interesting separate debate to have, but 94% of our roughly $8.5 billion budget in FY21 went back out to the community in the form of grants and awards. A note that this omnibus bill that just passed did give us the appropriations for FY22 that we're kind of halfway through. I think that was roughly 4-point-something% increase from FY21. Not exactly what I think we had been seeing in some previous language on Capitol Hill and in previous forms of legislation, but that's what we have to work with. So we do have a budget now for FY22 and are no longer under continuing resolutions. Some of those other numbers just speak to, I think, the number of awards that we work through. Many of you are on panels helping us to review all of these proposals that come in. Thank you for your service in the past and your service in the future. Looking at the FY22 NSF priorities, I think these fall in line. Some of these are very consistent with the theme of this session at NSF, and enhancing fundamental R&D and strengthening U.S. leadership in emerging technologies. That does include the creation of a new directorate. The next slide talks to that, so I'll save that. Advancing equity in science and engineering, advancing climate science and sustainability research, and remaining and advancing the forefront in infrastructure. That was also written into the legislation on prioritizing the NSF research facilities that are in different phases of construction leading to operation. Well, there was a big part in that omnibus bill that included NSF and that called out the creation of a new directorate. I believe the last directorate that was created at NSF was, I believe, size, if I'm not mistaken, in the mid-'80s. So this is kind of a generational event at NSF. This just does not happen. And there you see on the verticals, you see the acronyms for the various science and engineering directorates. And what we're standing up here is a new directorate that internally we've been calling TIP, for translation, technology, and innovation and partnerships. And these are cross-cutting themes. I think you're going to see a lot of exciting things come out of this new TIP directorate, where I think you'll see concentration of a lot of our translational activities, certainly thematics in partnerships with other agencies, partnerships internationally, partnerships with industry. I saw come across my email yesterday a brand new position in our international office that is a senior science advisor position, and that was all about partnerships internationally and across agencies. So that was good to see. But I think you'll see a lot of exciting new programs and partnering in programs across the agency out of TIP going into the coming fiscal years. Well, a little bit about the Office of Advanced Cyber Infrastructure. What do we mean by cyber infrastructure? Well, we mean a lot of things. I like this slide in that it, I think, captures what I view as kind of the components of CI that we have tried to convey and support in our office over the years. And we've already talked about a number of these components, especially people, organizations, and communities. There are other components. OSG represents multiple components, if you will, on this set, I would argue. My part of OAC is in networking and cybersecurity, and that's represented as well. And I think the challenge, the opportunities come in integrating these components together, combining these components, leveraging them, and being able to walk these paths in that are enabled by the integration and the use and the evolution of these components towards scientific discovery. And along with those discovery paths, the CI itself, those ecosystems must evolve. Well, under Manish Parishar's time at NSF, one of a number of, I think, legacies for Manish will be leaving behind work that we've done with the community in establishing blueprints, visions in these sectors, including an overarching vision for national cyber infrastructure in the 21st century. You can go to that URL where these blueprints are listed. Some overriding themes are listed there as principles. And I think one challenge that I think of often is balancing innovation with stability, being able to deliver production CI, but at the same time, have it be state of the art, have it be innovative and evolving and usable. And here are kind of the various blueprint documents. I'll spend a couple of moments talking, I think, to the CI Learning and Workforce Development one. PATH and OSG appear in more than one of these, and they will have an active role in, I think, the implementation and execution of these visions. I can point to maybe at least 4 of these, actually. And so the CI Learning and Workforce Development has evolved, I think, in a big way under Manish. The CCSTAR cyber training elements have kind of moved in under this program, but there's more than the cyber training solicitation. I think that that reflects the vision that we have for CI Learning and Workforce Development, and it cuts across a number of these other solicitations and activities, including PATH. All right, I'll move to democratizing access. How do we democratize access to all of these national scale resources and services. I think a lot of that remains an open question, will remain a challenge, right? And here's a look. I think Manish gave you this snapshot yesterday, or excuse me, Marone gave you the snapshot yesterday. The innovative systems in green are out of our ACSS program. That's a nice blend of both production and experimental compute systems in various phases of being built and going into operation. You see NCAR represented there. You see Frontera, our leadership class computing system that is kind of in an MREFC-like kind of pipeline of construction right now. You also see some of our cloud resources. Some of those are more geared towards computer science research. What's not listed here are some national scale testbed resources that I think could be included in this as well. Things like the wireless testbed power and fabric. And then finally, you see a bunch of blue dots that are almost hiding there. Those are the shared campus resources that both Marone and Frank have talked to, and I'll spend a little time touching on that because the campus cyberinfrastructure helped establish a number of those dots, for lack of a better term. So we just heard from the group that put together this wonderful report on the missing millions in providing the challenges in providing unified access in portals and mechanisms across the CI ecosystem, in supporting a diversity of allocation models, in developing agile and scalable models for support, and ensuring support is responsible for those needs. Against those goals, there are some activities underway, right? I think before I leave the missing millions report, there is so much in there. I will tell you at NSF, reacting to some of those recommendations is going to take time. I think we can point to some things that are underway. Joel already pointed to MSCC. I've got a slide on that, and I think you'll hear from Anna in more detail here in the bottom half of the hour on that activity. I think some of those recommendations take time for NSF to absorb and react to. And so hopefully you will see NSF react to some of those recommendations in more visible ways as well, in programmatic ways, maybe in ways that cut across programs. But back to the OSG all hands. This resource access pilot in enabling a user to launch a high throughput workflow across a range of resources. Marone showed you this slide. Manish repeated this slide at Ava's workshop to the large facilities a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, it's a busy slide, but I love this slide because the CMU researcher at the top, this experimental researcher that Marone and his team worked with to work out how this pilot might work with a fictional allocation. It hides the complexities, right, of all of those rich and varied resources that I showed on that slide before, these national CI services and resources. And this really is a vision that, if you go back to material, I think it dates back to the TerraGrid days, where there was this vision of having researchers transparently really jump across these systems, these high-end national scale systems. And I think perhaps we've arrived finally at the point where we can offer that kind of flexible, transparent access, maybe through a single allocation system, enabled in this case through the OSG fabric of services and an access point provided by PATH. Well, speaking of allocations, NSF has gotten underway now with exploring alternatives in allocations, right? There's always been what we call XRAC. There's been this concept of a computational scientist going back in after her research has been funded and asking through a separate proposal for an explicit allocation on a well-mapped compute resource. And so now we're kind of opening that up to exploring different models, right? And so there is this very interesting Dear Colleague letter that I'll show in a moment, and that Marone mentioned briefly yesterday, that I think is a very big deal because it has 14 basic research programs participating across NSF. I've personally have never seen a DCL like this before, and my colleague Bogdan Mahila is responsible for that. Also developing agile and scalable models for support and addressing the needs locally. I think that comes through in the vision blueprint for learning and workforce development. I think also you will see activities related to that appear in the coming awards under the access solicitation. So this was touched on earlier, especially by Lauren, the need for strengthening the CI professionals workforce. Under those goals, we have a number of programs and opportunities for funding that are in place. We just released a DCL recently that points to some of those programs and puts into place a CI professional mentoring and or professional development plan that is a requirement now in a couple of programs. I think you may see that spread across other programs in OAC. We have the MSCC activity that again, Anna will talk about. We have an interesting RCN solicitation that is open now. I don't have material on that, but if you Google 22-558, I don't have any more material on this talk. That is an open solicitation on supporting research coordination network activities in fostering and nurturing a diverse community of CI professionals. And then finally, we've got the cyber training that's open now. I've got a slide on that. I will mention briefly what just got underway also in the last fiscal year was in a way a follow-on to the wonderful CARC work that's been done in developing career paths and definitions and establishing a data resource center. That's been a little more structured and formalized now under a CoE pilot led by Dana Brunson and Internet 2, and there's the website for that. The minority serving CI consortium was just awarded, I think in the latter half of last calendar year. And I will leave Anna to talk about this in the second half of this hour. We are very excited about this at NSF and see this as a growing prism through which a number of other areas of activity at the national scale, at the regional scale, at local scales can be brought to bear and can be part of growing dialogue with the HBCUs, with the tribal colleges, universities, with the HSIs. I stuck this in. I just wanted to use this maybe as just a reminder that a pretty large competition called Access, which is a follow-on to Exceed. The community is about to see awards made here. They represent this follow-on era to Exceed in focused activities on allocation services, end user support services, operations and integration, monitoring and measurement. There will be a coordinating office as part of that. And I think this will allow the community to move forward in a more effective way through some of these activities in a deeper integration, in a way that draws in, I think, a lot of the campus activities. PATH and OSG are going to be an active part of these integration activities. And I look forward to those dialogues with PATH and the access awardees in the months and years to come. Finally, I'm just going to touch here on a few a couple of active opportunities I already mentioned, and end with CCSTAR. There is an open solicitation right now, and that is on cyber training, NSF 22574. It's really OAC's flagship program. It's an NSF-wide program. There are a lot of program officers on that solicitation. There's a new element in there that was not in there before, called CI Professional. I don't believe it has a cap on, you'll have to look at the solicitation. I'll refer you to Alan Sussman as well, who's the lead program director on that. I think that has a May deadline. So for funding opportunities in some of the themes that were already discussed this morning, this is a good program to look at for a funding opportunity. This is the Dear Colleague letter that speaks directly to allocation of high throughput computing resources. This holds for both this fiscal year and through fiscal year 23. And those research programs that are listed there, they cut across different directorates at NSF. This is not just for new proposals coming in to those programs. If you read the Dear Colleague letter, and this just came out a few weeks ago, this also pertains to awards already made, active awards on these programs. And they can contact their cognizant program officer, and they can work through a request for credits through PATH. So we're excited about that. It will be interesting to see how this develops and how the community might take advantage of this new form of getting access through the PATH services, through the OSG technologies at serving their computational needs across these programs. Okay, finally on campus cyber infrastructure, I'm looking at time, and I think I'll go through this quickly. I think most of you know this program. It started 11 years ago. It's known mostly to the community really as a campus networking program, and it's done a lot. I think it's approaching 400 awards, amazingly, over 11. That's a lot for our division to hand out in a single program. And most of those have gone towards connecting institutions, upgrading institutions to the national R&E fabric, right? And that's best represented by Internet 2. We have wonderful state and regional optical networks. And this program has evolved. It's evolved greatly. It's always had as a thematic, a deep partnership between the researchers and educators and students on the campus and campus IT leadership. And the most recent solicitation has come and gone, and we're busy making award decline decisions and recommendations on that last deadline. And this has changed over the years. There was I think a wonderful cyber team area that lasted for a bit. Before that, there was a CI engineer area. Those things, I think you can see those thematics now in that cyber training solicitation. You see area 2, regional coordination for small institutions. That's all about groups of under-resourced institutions getting connected in a 21st century way, in a gigabit plus way. There are wonderful awards coming out of that area that I won't be speaking to here, but this is part of the solution set, right, that I think the Missing Millions report talks to. This is one piece in getting these under-resourced, underrepresented institutions better connected so that they can then follow on and have better access to local, regional, national scale resources. A number of HBCUs are part of those Area 2 awards that are happening. I think that trend will continue along with HSIs and tribal colleges and universities. There's a great cyber team award that I'll mention briefly from, I think, last year, a year and a half ago, I should say, led by AHEC and involving North Dakota State University and 4 to 5 tribal colleges in the state of North Dakota. So in a way, we're through some of these point awards, there are good things happening that I think do address the challenges and themes in that Missing Millions report. On campus computing, I'll just get right to it here on what has been the most popular area in this program since it got underway. I think 2019 was the first time we put it in here. And it is in the most recent solicitation, most popular area. I think that will be seen probably pretty clearly in awards that will come out a little later this year under this area. It points to open science grid in a couple of areas. It encourages under-resourced institutions interested in funding for a compute resource on campus to reach out to the PATH project. And then there's this interesting requirement also in that area that separates it from, say, the MRI program, which has also been great at funding campus and regional level resources at a higher funding level. This is only up to 400,000. We have a requirement in there in sharing with a national fabric, a compute fabric, and a federated system. And we point to open science grid. We don't require it, but it does turn out that the vast majority of, let's count this up, 35 or so that we've made awards in this area since 2019, vast majority have chosen open science grid. These are the newest ones. They may not have contacted OSG yet. Maybe some in a previous year are still getting underway. The COVID era has certainly delayed some of these projects, as you might expect. I think you're going to hear from one of these later this afternoon. I think Doug is talking. I think out of this area, there was an award to West Texas A&M. I think you'll be hearing from that PI as well later this afternoon, but I'll just pick one out here. This is my last slide. From that set that was just made late in the latter half of calendar year 2021. This was to Tennessee Tech University. It's an interesting evolution, right? They are previous awardees in the networking side. I think they're also part of a cyber training award. It's referred to here in the abstract. This is the abstract language. And I put in bold there their own words that they wrote for their award abstract and their vision, their ambitions to provide this at a regional level in Tennessee, and what this will help enable across their campus with respect to supporting 17 plus science projects just on their campus. The abstract doesn't mention OSG, but they have plans to once they acquire and configure and operate this campus compute cluster to join OSG with, I think, an even bigger number than 20% is what they promised. So these things take time to develop, but that should add to at least to the non-R1 statistics for Frank and Marone. And with that, thank you. Hopefully there's a little time for a question or two.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions, comments